what's up, everybody? This is The Right Mindset. I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and I'm joined today with Dana. I'm not gonna be able to do it. I'm not gonna be able to do it. Let's just get the name properly. Dana, go ahead? What's your name?
Hi, I'm Dana Encarnacion. It's okay.
That's perfect.
No one gets it. It's basically like a fancy incarnation.
No, look, you said it perfectly. No, it's like you've been practicing it for your entire life. If it makes you feel better, no one actually says my last name correctly. They say the American version, which is Bellezza, and I just accept. I go, yeah, that's right, that's fine. But it's it's Italiano, so it's Bellezza, because the Z and the T's and the.
I figured.
But Bellezza is like, so which is funny because I'm a performer, and like when I perform, I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and I always tell people I have a stage name because it's not how you say my name.
I know sometimes you just have to go with the easiest one. It's like I had Sanders, which is my father's name, but I changed it to my mother's maiden name, which is Encarnacion.
Now, is there a reason you did that specifically for being an author and kind of like representing more diversity, or was it something else that made you, if you don't mind talking about it?
Oh yeah, for sure. It was more of a personal thing. It's like I grew up with a single mom, so it was just my mom, and my mom's maiden name is Encarnacion, which, fun fact, a relative of ours actually sailed the ocean blue with Christopher Columbus.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So they had lots of blankets.
So I just changed it to Encarnacion, I guess, to embrace my Puerto Rican heritage.
Oh, interesting. And what does it have a meaning? Like Bellezza is like beautiful in Italian, right? So or specifically a feminine version of beauty because it's Bellezza with an A. Does it have a meaning? Does it have a
It is. It's reincarnation.
Oh, it literally looks like reincarnation now that you say it. Well, that's pretty interesting. I've always found names so powerful in that sense that they aren't just letters, and that comes down to writers as well. When we're creating our stories, we're not prone to just pick a name like it'd be a great name, Joe. Like there has to be purpose. Are you like that too when you choose your names? Do you try to find something that has meaning?
Yes. So with my book, I chose Tinker, and Tinker, she is a child prodigy, and she creates inventions. And you think of like Tinkerbell always make like these crazy inventions, like always like tinkering to create something new. And that's what I wanted to choose, and that's the name that I wanted to choose for my main character for my book.
And you just like, let's go for the Tinker. No magic sparklies though, and
no magic sparklies. Like she's a science girl.
It's a complete science. I like that. You're being like, let's do it. Let's get him into the program. Let's make sure she's educated. She's her own self, but she's also capable, right?
Yes.
Are you more prone to read books that have not just intellectual characters, but more scientific minds for their characters? I guess sci-fi maybe, or just technology based? Do you like that kind of storytelling?
Yeah, I love sci-fi. I am actually like really attracted to the smarter characters, the witty characters, the one who's like clever and always has like the higher up on the antagonist, or like anybody in general. I just feel that they play a lot more to the story than the main characters themselves, as if they're a side character.
Yeah, well, that is completely understandable. Like when the main character is that, though, it also adds another element. But at the same time, Shakespeare, Sherlock Holmes, right? Traditionally, over the last, I'd say 15 years, if you saw Sherlock Holmes on the screen, they basically were a-holes, right? And it's like, well, they think differently, and it's like, does that really justify their behavior? But if you read the novels, he's not really like that. He's not eccentric in that extreme, like like he's just so smart, he just doesn't know how to interact with people.
Yeah.
But in the books, he's a little bit more contemporary with his behavior. He understands protocol, he's a little bit more respectful, but he does have that air of arrogance because he is slightly above.
Yes.
Yeah, So I've always found that interesting with the stories and how they kind of change it I guess for our audience of today, they're just like, let's just make Shakespeare, not Shakespeare, Sherlock Holmes, just make him an a-hole, right? Do you think a character having that freedom to be such an arrogant a-hole, even though they're intelligent, gives them the right to be so? Do you feel like
Oh, absolutely not. I feel like no one has the right to become an a-hole just because like they have the upper hand on somebody. Um, it's like I think that maybe like tone it down a bit.
mhm.
It's like kind of see what you have in common rather than what I say rather than show off basically.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to just be like, look at me. And you like you said, tinker, right? So they're smart, they're capable, they're in the sciences, they're an inventor, right? They have the ability to create things. How do you personally find that line between knowing they're intelligent and interacting with other people? How do you find their personality while you're writing to do that?
Well, it's all about mindfulness. I try to make Tinker be more s- self-aware and more mindful of the others that she's interacting. So if she's interacting with, let's say, her best friend Lita. It's like Lita plays like an important role in Tinker's life, and she only has like that high school level education, while Tinker she's just like way above that.
Yeah.
So she kind of has to like take a step back. It's like, okay, I'm not dealing with my college buddies or my professors. I'm dealing with a person who is way behind me. So I kind of have to reel it back in so that way we can find a common ground where we can have like a casual conversation.
Um, that's always a good approach because it's almost like the characters that we create have to be an extension of our voices too, and what we would
Hmm.
like to see in the world. And you know, the other thing that's always interesting about intelligent characters is that sometimes we have to recognize as writers that our characters might be smarter than us because they're doing things that we've never really ventured into. I'm
Hmm.
sure you haven't created a spaceship, nor
No.
technology that has expanded the human capacity for travel, like a transporter or something like that. But that doesn't negate the fact that you're an intelligent person. However, what is it that you personally do to find the voice of an intelligent character when you reach a point in the story where you're saying, you know, I know I did my research, but am I thinking through my voice or am I thinking through the character's voice in this moment? Do you have those situations?
Oh yes, all the time. So I mainly of course I do my research, but I also have to think about word choice and to getting this character to sound as intelligent as possible, but also not to confuse my readers. And that is always a challenge for me, myself, the writer. And I kind of have to like figure out, okay, how do I get this to both sound complicated, but also easy to understand?
Hmm. Yeah, do you have those the secondary characters that come in and is like, could you say that in English, please?
Yes, all the time.
I have a friend who writes like basically jumbo, basically like scientific mumbo jumbo
Mhm.
for some of their stories or scripts or whatever. And I go, how much of it is accurate? He's always like, I don't know, nor do I care. It's like, we're not supposed to know. Where the audience shouldn't know. I could talk about anything I want as long as I throw in like one or two real words. Be like, yeah, the space time continuum is, and then mumbo jumbo, and then like quantum physics mumbo jumbo, and then I have a character go, yeah, we're lost, and then I could dumb it down for you, and then what they explain is just layman's terms. So it's always funny when you see like a smart character in a book, and then you always have to have that other person go, all right, for the audience. I need you to know my character's a genius, but I also need you to follow the plot. It's always a fun like a
Yeah.
game. Before we started the show, I had you pick two numbers, and I'm going to take one of those numbers right now and ask you a question
Okay.
that usually generally will start a debate.
Okay.
So here we go. There is a theory that a writer's life is a lonely one since we're isolated while we work. How much of this do you feel is true? And should this misconception be retrained to motivate writers to find themselves involved in the communities of other writers?
Oh, it's like I was worried about that one. Okay. Because you said about a certain number
Uh,
that you were looking forward to. But anywho, it's like, no, a writer's life is not lonely. Well, I can't vouch for all writers, but I can speak for myself that it's like my writing life is not lonely at all. It's like I interact with all my followers like on TikTok, on Instagram, and I also venture out into my local into local book lovers. Like they do events here, say where I live. So and I can interact, talk about books, talk about stuff that they're writing, stuff that I'm writing, and I definitely think that yeah, that misconception needs to be like retrained. That yes, we do have lives.
and how does reaching out to the community both through social media and also physically, as you're saying, there's like groups and stuff. How has that really helped, in a positive way, your career as a writer and developed you as a writer?
Oh, that okay. So for me, it benefited me. It's like to see what the audience was like looking and see like what other books are out there. I recently went to an event where other book lovers got together. It was called a silent reading, where
Oh.
everybody gets together. They have their books, and for 30 minutes, we talk about say what are we reading, what it's about, what are we looking for in the future, and then after that's 30 minutes of silence, and we just read. And so in that 30 minutes, I got to really learn about say what's happening in the in the book world, say
Hmm.
what's going on with my audience and what kind of books that they're looking forward to. So that really gives me like an idea like what's my next step in terms of what book am I coming out with or what book I should be like expecting
Hmm.
and things like that.
Now, with these groups, it seems like it's more like they're reading established books already. Like you all pick a
Mhm.
book. Do you have, well, instead of making it a yes or no question, so
Yes.
have you found yourself in other groups where you're able to basically talk about each of your own books to explore those stories and then hear perspectives of other people's stories and then kind of everybody gives feedback on what they're hearing from each author? Have you been in those positions, and if so, how has that helped you as a writer?
I haven't interacted with a writer. Mainly like spoken with readers, but I have like talked to them about like what I do, what book is coming out in the near future. But I have in college, I came across a few aspiring authors,
Yeah.
and I got to see some of their works too, and it was kind of like a nice, healthy little constructive criticism and feedback. And that right there really helped me a lot in terms of my own writing. And I hope that my own feedback helped them with their writing too.
Yeah. What is it about criticism that you might almost fear, but then accept when it's given to you, especially from a peer? Not someone like somebody who sleeps on the couch, not doing anything with their life, but someone like a peer, that somebody is doing what it is you want to do and or are following the same journey as you, and they give you that criticism. What is it about that fear, but then acceptance of it?
Okay, so I have some good things to talk about constructive criticism and some bad things. I'm going to break it up a bit.
Do it up.
So, so constructive criticism, there is a fine line between positive feedback and bullying. Okay, so and I think it's like all about word choice because I've experienced both. So constructive criticism is okay. What I would suggest for your book and and provide evidence that's in your story. And and I have experienced some things where they don't really read it, but I they don't really read it. And it's like what I would suggest, but you're not telling me what I need to fix. You're actually telling me what you don't like about the book. And at that time, that's going to create a negative impact on the writer. And so, um, yes, it's both good and bad, but I feel like the word choice needs to be like addressed.
Hmm.
And what was the second part of your question?
Well, basically, how has it helped you as a writer ultimately?
Okay. It helped me realize that editing is a good thing.
Yeah.
I didn't always think editing was a good thing, but now I love editing, surprisingly.
Yeah, I've always looked at editing as a chance to write the other version of the book.
Mm-hmm.
The first version, your first draft, I I would almost call I do a zero draft. It's some authors do that do a zero draft, which is sort of like you're just word dumping. I'm a huge outliner, and in my outlines, as I'm crafting and plotting out my scenes and like leading into each other, that's like my zero draft. There'll be dialogue in there, scene structure, motivations, things like that. All kind of, I'm asking myself questions within the zero draft.
You're a lot more
Uh,
organized than me.
yeah. Well, I've been doing this for a long time, so it's like 20 plus years, and I actually I was on one other interview, and I was telling people how I never outlined, and then I got hired to write a story for someone, and they were like, before you start, can you send me an outline? I was like, a what? And then I fell in love with it. I was like, outlines are amazing.
Yes.
Um, However, I am, like I said, my zero draft is the word dump, and it's like I know what my outline is because I'll always plot out my main plot first with like 1 to 2 sentences per beat. Like there's 27 plot beats to any given story, so I'll write out 1 to 2, even 3 sentences for each plot beat. Then I go back and I'll discover the story while I'm like outlining it with my zero draft, and it'll help me like move things around. Uh, but one of the things about critiquing and everything is like that first book that you write is the version that you've always wanted to write. It's what came out. It's the truth, and you'll always have that version. Mistakes, grammar mess ups, whatever, but everything will be there. It's literally dumping the entire story there. But then you have to say to yourself, well, what's the story people can handle?
Yeah.
And that's really where editing comes in, because you have to say, all right, this scene is for me, but it's
Yes.
not for the story, and I have to be comfortable with taking that out. And that's always been very difficult for me when somebody critiques. They go, I don't understand why we jumped off. Like, I feel like it completely went, and this scene just took me out of the movement of the story. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so awesome. There's this thing, and like, and then you go, wait. I think they're right, and I have the story I want. It's there. So let
Yes.
me edit it and kind of like clean the story. Um, is that something that editing has done for you? Like the mental approach, like, does it um, help you kill, as the term is kill your babies? Like, does it help you kill your babies, the precious things that you want in that story, even though you find through criticism, as you say, healthy positive critiquing, which I agree with you. It's word choices. There's a difference between this
Mm-hmm.
sucks and why this is not working.
Yes.
And does that, to simplify the question, does it help you kill your babies within your story when you step back from the emotional connection to it
Mm-hmm.
and take that criticism, and how does that get your story going?
Yes. So, like you said, it's like I wrote the story for me. Okay, save. Now we have to say edit. And I don't particularly like the saying like kill your babies. I like to think that drafts are diamonds in the rough.
Oh, all right, I
So
like that.
your first draft is an uncut diamond. It looks ugly, but to you it's the most prettiest thing, but it may not be pretty to others. And so now you have to like cut it, buff it out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like revise, edit. So now it's like first draft, first edit done. It's like okay, starting to look a little nice. Second draft, okay. Third, now it's like now we're talking. And so it's like that's how I think editing is, and that version is a lot more nicer.
I actually really like the diamond in the rough
Mhm,
metaphor. That's definitely a nicer way to look at it.
mhm. And so, I totally forgot your question. I'm so sorry.
Well, like you're saying, you have the version that you love, and then
Mhm,
as you're taking the uncut gem, uncut gems, you're taking the the diamond in the rough, and you're polishing it. You're taking something and refining it, and streamlining it, and honestly, streamlining isn't never necessarily
mhm,
a negative thing. Just because it's not every element of what you want the story to be doesn't make it a bad story or less of a story than it was. It's just sometimes, like you're saying, you're cleaning the diamond up, you're pulling out the value of the diamond,
mhm.
and even though you love what you saw in the diamond in the rough, you answered the question in a very elegant way. So,
Awesome.
as you were describing the value of that diamond, and I think that's a good way for especially our listeners that are taking heed to what's going on. It's about changing the way we look at things and our word choices.
Mhm.
Jumping back to the critiquing, and killing your babies has such a strong,
Yeah.
very dark tone, but that diamond in the rough kind of elevates and makes it a little bit more elegant,
Mhm, it's like,
especially
it's
with the
not
process.
bad, but it just needs to be shapened up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to if I am taking on that metaphor, just so you have
Go for it.
re-educated me, and I like it. Uh, now, as you know, this is a highlighting series for authors in
Mhm.
all stages of their careers, all levels of their careers. And would I be going outside the box to say you're a baby author, as they say, someone who's starting their career?
Yes.
All right. So as because I don't want to insult anyone, because there's always
You're
a start. There's a start to every career, right? As you're developing a career as a writer, what is it about that journey that you are both liking and the things that you are not necessarily liking?
well, I love what I do. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that right now. I love having the control of it's like doing the marketing, doing the editing. I love the creative control, basically. And I am not one to like trust someone to do it's like to do what to it's like to do what I do. And I think that's what led me to go the self-publishing route.
Mhm.
And what else? What I don't like about it is the social media marketing is hard. It's like trying to get your name out there and hope that you get enough views. It's hard, and I'm not gonna lie, it's like my views have been suffering a lot lately. I can barely pass 200 views on TikTok.
Yeah, it feels like something's going on with the algorithm, because I noticed that for a couple people where it's like there the other thing is you're getting high likes but low
Mhm.
views. So
Yeah.
the content's good. And
Mhm.
then if you look at retention, the retention's quality retention, but the views aren't going up. So it could just be, they say it's the shadow banning, or maybe we're just not hitting the right quote unquote audience, or whatever the case, or maybe we're stuck in a smaller community. And with social media marketing, obviously it's about expanding into other avenues, other platforms. I've recently actually jumped off of platforms because I was, like my whole life I've been teaching people social media and all and marketing, and that's all I do is I teach people in the entertainment industry how to be successful, right? So, and I was like, I'm not happy in that world, though, and in reality, marketing is about representing your truth and your brand and your voice through your actions. So I step back as a representation of my voice, right? And then advertisement is really about, it's called imprint marketing. Like you ever hear a song you don't like, but then by the end of the summer, you're like, this song is awesome.
Yeah.
It's imprint marketing, where like you just hear it so much, you end up connecting to it either through relationships with a third party like friends, or that it's so familiar to you, you're just like, oh, it's familiar, my brain likes this. And with writing like novels, it's the same thing. There's your voice, as in the things that matter, right?
Mhm.
Your viewpoints, your morals, your purpose, your missions, right? And by I see a lot of authors, they go, they'll be like, they'll say, here's my book, by the way, here's my book, by the way, here's the cover of my book, hey, did you know I have a book? This is my book. You know what I love about my book? My book is my book. And there's no mission there, there's no
Mhm.
moral, there's no purpose, so how do we connect to that? And it's like, we'll talk about the things that matter. So for example, your book, if I may,
Mhm.
is it's about a woman character, right? Is that
Yes.
fair to say? A woman character who is intelligent,
Mhm.
likes creating things, is in the sciences. And what is it that's important to you about that story being told? And it's those elements that are actually your voice. And if you talk about those elements and then they see those elements in your stories, that's how you build and connect with your audience, technically.
Mhm.
Right. But then there's the advertisement.
Okay.
And that's probably the part that's the most annoying because you have to literally pay for that. You got to put money into that and get your ads going, and you have your video ads which are 10 15 to 30 seconds, and then you have your minute ads, then you have your physical ads which are just like, pop and goes or your call to actions. And it's like, I just want to write. But you're self-publishing, so
Mhm.
it's always going to be that world where it's like, oh yeah, I have to do the like you come to this like, oh, I need to do the business of this business to get the career going.
Yeah.
And it's so just the concept alone is overwhelming because stories, you love your stories, you
Yeah.
love reading stories, you love, right?
Mhm.
I'm not speaking out of school, right?
Like, no,
And
you're hitting all the notes.
right, yeah, and then it's like, well, there's this world that is not interesting, especially to creative types. It's like, what do I care if what are the words I have to use to call action? What are the, like, why do I got to post a 15-second? What do I post in a 15-second video? What is my ad going to say? What is my, blah, blah, blah? I don't even care. It's like, I'll just talk about my book. And then what happens is you're actually pulling yourself away from the audience because there's nothing to connect to.
Mhm.
Right. And it was like so hard when I was starting out to realize that because we're passionate about our books.
Yeah.
We just want everyone to know about the books. But like, it's true, you can't connect. But strong, female, capable character that's not only intelligent but is creating things to change the world and the environment around her in the story, while also, like you said, bringing down her ego to help connect with people in her lives
Yes.
that aren't as necessarily as high intellectually as her. Those are all amazing themes and things that people connect to, because sometimes we feel smarter than others, but also sometimes we don't feel as smart as others. And it's nice to have friends that kind of quote unquote dumb down for us and make us feel heard, seen, and understood, like they're giving us our time. And that's a beautiful element of your story.
Yes, mindfulness is a really big theme in my book. I put in a lot of themes where I can be able to connect to my readers. They'd be
Mm,
like, "Hey," it's like, "That's me." It's like, "I feel that." And you feel really seen or heard. And I add elements where if say in certain environments where like really toxic environments, it's like, I've been there actually. I've going through it right now. And so I really wanted my readers to feel connected, to feel seen, to feel heard. And then also, not only that, but find a healthy solution to that.
mm.
And like words where you feel, say words where you feel that someone could have said that to you or can say that to you now. And it's like, it's on the page.
Yeah, it's right there. You can just find it. What are some of those themes that are important to you that ended up in your book? But more importantly, if you're able to explore those themes with us, like tell me about some of those themes that really hit you hard personally, that you were like, I need this in there.
Well, I've always felt like the social outcast. I am like really introverted and I have a really hard time talking to people. So it gives me I have a tough time with it. And I put that into my main character Tinker. It's like she's a child prodigy. It's like she's not on the same educational level as her peers that are the same age. So she feels like the social outcast. So she really has to be mindful and aware of like of where she stands. And not only that, and she gets bullied by that. Bullying is also like a major thing too. So I really added a lot of myself into my characters, not just
Hmm.
Tinker, but separate into the supporting cast. And I wanted to include this like the situations, but also the solutions on it's like on how to go about that, and really have that emotional connection with my readers.
That's beautiful. The idea of not just connecting to your readers. Like obviously, we all want that, but that other element that you're placing into it, where you're saying, look, I went through this, and not only is it something we deal with, but you know what? Also, here's that solution. What it
Mhm.
would look like for me to implement that solution, and I'm going to put it in my stories so you could see the process, and maybe even the evolution of it,
Mhm.
where we see the resolve and the resolution. So
Yeah, it's like, this is my main character, like, creating a healthy environment. And it's like showing you how to develop that healthy environment through open conversation.
yeah, which is good. That's one of the main reasons we do this and we communicate, is so we can hear the stories of others and get to know one another, because communication is vital to growth, to
Mhm.
understanding. Because remember, knowledge is useless without the understanding of it. The
Ex
practical application is. Um, do you find, well, how has writing your story through your experiences and getting those themes onto your page affected you emotionally while working through those scenes?
Oh, it was tough. It's like there was some aspects where, like, I was literally crying while I was typing it. It's like it's like kind of personal, but it's like I was bullied like from elementary school to college.
Hmm.
And I it's like and I'm it's like and I'm putting it down. It's like I'm writing it down and it's like I'm in tears. And I was really hoping that I didn't feel alone in this, that when people like read my stories, like, honey, same. It's like
Yeah.
you are not alone in this. I kind of wanted to create it not only like I wanted to create it like a support group as well. It's like we've been there, it's like sharing our stories and like it's kind of hard to put into words.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm just grateful you're talking about it. This is beautiful to open up like this and to hear your struggles and everything.
It's like, yeah, it's like I wish that what I apply is like I could have had someone who it's like who helped me go through that.
Yeah.
And with this, like Tinker, she has the supporting cast and she's also like building the healthy environment herself and for others who are having a hard time trying to develop that.
So in a way, she's becoming the change she wants to see in the world.
Mhm.
She's like, this is not okay, but I'm going to do what I believe is right. And hopefully it'll inspire others, not only through my actions, but having the opportunities before.
Yeah.
Is that something you do in your real life, where you try to emulate what it is you wish people would, like how they would act? And do you physically do things to motivate and inspire others to do such things?
It's like, yes, of course. It's like whenever I'm out, I try to like create like an open conversation. It's like even when I used to work as a cashier at a grocery store, it's like I want to engage with I want to
Mm.
engage with people. It's like I want to say, "How are you doing?" I'm not saying this like out of professionalism. I'm saying it as like a kind person. It's like talking one on one,
It's funny.
and it's like and just like, hey, that there are kind people out there who are just want to speak, not out of obligation. It's like trying to make trying to make your day a little bit more special, and that's like my writer's motto.
So you weren't like reading from a script when you were a cashier, like, "Hi, how are you? Thank you. Bloop bloop bloop. Give me your money."
Nope, I could be silent and just check you out and be done with it. It's like, but no, I'm genuinely curious.
I always find it funny though when you're on the cashier line, whatever, and
Mhm.
you throw them off their game because you respond in the things that are not on the script, is what I say. Where they're like,
It
"Hi,
stuns
how are
me.
you?" And you're like, what's crazy about the sun? And they're just like, "What?" Like, just ringing you up, like when So it's always fun to play with people in that sense of like getting them to be like, "Oh, life is present right now. There's something is happening, and I need to actively engage in this."
And you never know what they might say might be interested to put in your book.
Yeah. Yeah. I would almost say that's the evil side of being a writer, is like we're trying to have empathy for the people around us, but we're like, I could use this.
Yeah.
Oh God. Like, do your friends realize that? Are they do they ever find them like just going, I want to tell you about something, but I need it off the record?
No, they never know.
Yes.
It's like, keep going.
So tell me about this other person.
What?
That's so intense. You just write it down in your book.
Yep. It's like Google Notes.
Oh, all right. Well, that's something interesting. I always like to talk about writing process. You bring up a great element, and Google Notes.
Yes.
Um, Is that the way you basically focus all your writing is on Google Notes and organize it over there?
Not always. I used to be like sticky notes. So I was a sticky notes girl, or just like write it down on like a notepad
Mm-hmm.
and just have it somewhere in the room. Like I know it exists. I used to have like a box full of sticky notes and I just like sift through it trying to find what I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's like this isn't working. So I try to make it a point to become as organized as possible,
Oh
especially
yeah.
with my outlines. So I use Google Notes. So you can use it on your computer or on say or on the phone. There's an app for it. It's completely free. And so it's like and whatever you write on your phone is going to be on your laptop. So awesome.
Yeah.
So I just go ahead and just write my ideas on Google Notes. And then if I'm doing outlines, what I when I do for outlines is I write from start to finish on the chapter I'm writing on. So it's just like from like say like from the morning she woke up to where she goes to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go from there and say Google Notes like helps us because I write very detailed outlines. And those are the two main things that really help me. And that's that's pretty much it. It's like none too fancy. I like to keep it as simple as possible. So it's just Google Notes and Google Docs.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's.
I'm sorry. Google Sheets. Google Sheets is really helpful when you're trying to do word count
Mm-hmm.
and trying to do your characters. It's like say characters like okay, Tinker, age 16, red hair, secrets, it's like secrets, background, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I don't think readers understand like what goes into it. Like you
It's
meet
a
a character
lot.
like Jim and or a Christine or whatever, and it's like maybe they exist on 3 pages and then we never see them again. But to us, there's like a whole thing.
Yes, like I have about like over 20 characters in my book.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize that my favorite character, which is the male protagonist's right-hand man, I didn't realize I didn't put a description down for him. It was like, what does he look like again? And I didn't realize that I was using his brother's description for him
Oh, that's funny.
and they're fraternal twins. I'm like, oh, so you mean that for 7 years I've been using your brother's description and we have no idea what you really look like?
Yeah. And
Oops.
remember, fraternal twins aren't necessarily identical because you have Mario and Luigi are fraternal twins in
Hmm.
the Mario games.
Yeah,
Hey, it's a me, I'm Mario.
I love Mario.
Yeah, it's just great stuff. uh, and I'm just saying that because I love pizza and plumbing. I don't know why. It's just probably because I'm Sicilian. Um, how it goes. Uh, so your process is mostly organized onto basically Google Drive and the
Mhm.
elements that come into Google Drive, which is the sheets, the notes, and uh, how has that actually improved your writing process by organizing it?
It's like, oh, it's like it helps a lot. It's like helps me keep track of my it's like keep track of my workout. I try to keep it as tight as possible because if you guys don't know, I use my draft was 2,000 pages long, over 2,000 pages.
That's like
Yeah,
8 books.
pretty much. And so if you properly format it, it would be a little over 800.
Okay, okay.
This is like decent, okay. And so I try to make word counter really it's like tighten it up basically. And in terms of like writing, it has made editing so much more faster and so swift and very swift.
Hmm.
It's like to the point where I thought I was not going to be done until like 2024 because it was a lot. And it helps me like with Google Sheets, I'm able to do like chapter one. This chapter was about da 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 da. It
Hmm.
was such and such words. It helps me keep track and like okay, first edit was like 2,500, second edit was like 1,500.
Okay, okay. Do you so when you're writing, it's not all in one sheet, one note. It's like your chapter one is its own file, chapter two is its own file, chapter three
Hmm.
is its own file. Um, It's always so interesting to see, like, as a writer, you have your chapter one, and then you see like the folder just filling up with chapters, and your book coming together, and you're getting closer and closer to the end. What is it about getting to the last couple chapters that either makes it exciting and or sad, that it's coming to a conclusion?
It's sad, but it's also nerve-wracking. Like you're on the last few pages and you just keep on going. Like you don't want it to end because like there's so much to tell, but at the same time you kind of have to teach yourself to hold back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why cliffhangers is like such a big thing.
Yeah.
It's like you have to hold yourself back so that we can be able to tell more in the next book. And it's like I posted this, I was 20 pages away. I'm still on 20 pages because I'm still writing.
As you finish 20 more appear.
Pretty much.
Well, for new writers out there, or just writers in general, if they're listening, what is your advice to understanding the conclusion, that moment where you place the last period? What advice do you have to say, I have reached the last period, there's no more I should write?
Ooh, okay. So I feel like this is gonna sound silly, but when your head's like, but when your mind is kind of like jumbled, it's like you want to tell them this, you want to tell them that, but it's just like you have to really step back and think, is this going to make sense from start to finish? So let's try Marvel. Marvel's a universal thing.
What is that? What's Marvel? No.
It's like, I was like, you almost scared me.
It's what Batman. I know what it is. No.
Well, you have like Captain America, Iron Man. It's like all separate stories, but yet they all lead to the same thing. Now, do you think when we reached Endgame, say if we continue it, would we still have the same spark? Do you think we would still have the same spark when we last seen Endgame? Do you think it's going to amount to Endgame? It's not going to have like the same stronghold from like Captain America to Endgame.
Well, yeah, philosophically speaking,
sound like at that point you sound like you're dragging on, like you want to continue the story, but at the same time you have to finish strong.
Yeah.
Or else you're gonna end it weak.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the value of Endgame was 10 to 11 years of like hard work and storytelling, and it's great because the end of that era created the new ordinary world for this universe where we can start fresh. And I think one of the hardest parts for Marvel is that they're still dealing with the repercussions of what Endgame brought to them. So you have characters like Wanda, you have characters like Peter, Spider-Man dealing with Iron Man. And it's like, it's almost as if it's the fumes of a story that concluded.
Exactly.
And I think that's where they're having, and again, this is just my perspective because everything is subjective when it comes to, likes and dislikes. I'm still kind of enjoying their products, but at the same time, I feel like they're looking for their footing again. Whereas when it first started with, the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk and Iron Man, they were just starting and they were like, this is the story. And happenstance led him to the Infinity Wars, because at the end of the first Avengers, Joss Whedon was just like, I'll put this there for the fans. And then they were like, wait a minute. I think we could do something with this. We could do something. I got super excited when Thanos popped up at the end of Avengers as the, from the coda or the end credit thing. And, but now it's like, what are we doing?
Like you feel like they're still writing on the coattails.
Yeah, exactly. They're just like, well, this is happening, but we also want to add new characters, and at the same time, like, what is their story? We have to introduce them, and it's almost detrimental to the story that they're trying that. But now I guess they're doing the multiverse. Is that that's the, and I'm looking forward to Kang, and that actor. I hate that I can't remember his name, but that actor who plays is fantastic. He's always been good in everything he's ever done. So, but moving on to your process and stuff like that, how do you begin your writing process? Like, obviously you have your story you're working on now. Let's assume that story's over.
Okay.
How would you begin the next book? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the book after the one you're writing, but just in general, a book. How do you begin that process?
It's kind of silly, but it always starts with like a random thought.
Okay.
It's like Tinker's Affliction was originally when I read a Wattpad book. When I first got into Wattpad, it was in 2015.
And what is that for the audience that might not know?
Hmm?
You said, a WAPAP?
Yeah, a Wattpad book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. For the audience that might not know, including
so Watt,
myself.
so Wattpad is a free it's a free reading service, so you can like read books from like it's like from other
Oh,
it's like from other authors. Like it can be like from a student to like something else. They have various genres, and it's also like free to write. And that's actually when I first published Tinker's Affliction. It was originally a Wattpad book,
oh,
and then when
interesting.
I finished it, I took it off so that we can go ahead and start the editing process. So Tinker's Affliction was originally inspired by a book that I read on Wattpad that they dropped in like 2010. It only had like 6 chapters, and I'm like, no. So I just like, okay, I like the premise of this, but how do I add my own spin to it? So I did like the whole general idea. It's like she's a foster kid. It's like she's a foster kid and she gets adopted by a family, and it turns out that the family are werewolves. And
Of
so,
course.
of course. And so how do I add my own spin to it? So it's like, And so I don't know why, but Tinkerbell came into my mind.
Yeah.
It's like I love steampunk culture. So it's like, ooh, it's like, okay, so we can make her into like a mad scientist. Like, it's like we can make her have an English accent. And so it was just like random thought built on random thought, random thought. And it's like we're just gonna run with it.
Yeah.
And so that was my idea. And then for like outline wise, I went ahead and just did it in like a general outline for the chapter I was working on. It'd be like it was girl is it's like is genius trying to get adopted. It's like and blah 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 blah. And it was all in the past tense. I write my outlines in the past tense. Because it sounds like that the story is has already been written and it's like it's
Yeah.
telling me the story basically.
So in your outline, for example, like chapter one, you would write chapter one, and then you'd sort of write a paragraph basically explaining the things you want to happen, or do you bullet point it out into like beats? Like, I need this to be explained. These things have to happen. I'm going to introduce whatever, a secondary character here. Which way do you usually go? Are you more of like the paragraph, like you're saying, or are you like a bullet pointer?
I'm a paragraph. I write from like start to finish on that particular chapter.
Oh, all right. And is it like
It's
a rough
morning.
draft of what that chapter, like it's a rough draft, or it's more like, I'm just asking because I like other writers to kind of hear the process for people, because it kind of hopefully can inspire them, because they might feel lost. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do with an outline. So it's always nice to hear like the deeper take on it. What I'm asking is ultimately, um, is th- are you writing out like a chapter that's more notative, or
Yes.
okay, so it's like almost a full chapter, but
Yes.
it's
It's almost kind of like a chapter and it has like the key points that I wanna point out. So it's extremely detailed. You kind of like think that I wrote the chapter itself.
yeah.
And but I mainly focus on the main points that I want to point out, and then like any like magical wispy things I kind of like fill it in between as I'm writing
Okay.
like the chapter itself, but it's kind of like a very generic almost kind of like note takey paragraph.
So when you're done with the outline and you're ready to write, say, your first draft, do you go back and you just basically write through what you already wrote, or do you start over and you're like, all right, the first sentence or paragraph says this. Now, how do I create that moment in my literary work?
Yeah, it's like that's what I do. So it's like let's say okay, I'm going to use a different book
Yeah, yeah,
as
yeah. Please,
an
yeah. You
example.
could even make up a complete book.
Yes. It's like I have a book on Wattpad. It's called "Creepy is the New Beautiful," and it's about a girl named Malva Asperata. So it's like in this book, so she's really nervous to go have her first date. And so it's kind of like it's like Malva is nervous about her first date, and I'll write like I'm standing in the window. It's like I'm standing in the mirror looking at my appearance, just dreading the day. It's like just dreading the day when I finally have to take off this mask.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of like that. So it goes from my notes, it has like a really generic sentence. And then when I go to like write the scene, I have to like build the scene around that note takey sentence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. And as a writer, our job is to pull the reader in, and we do that through different imagery and using the senses and which I tell people there's six senses and not just the I could see dead people, but you have the sense of motion. And some people we forget that things are in motion. The way we feel through movement is one of the senses that we can utilize as a writer for imagery. um but that's always probably my favorite part. Once the writing is like, how do I take something that's like a generic sentence like they meet, like, and turn it into something that is not necessarily cinematic, because it's not a visual medium. It's a we're reading. It's an imaginative medium.
Mhm.
And you're like, I can't just say they meet. Like, how did they meet? Why did they meet? What is it? What's
Gotta get
what's
creative.
holding them back? Yeah. Is it an easy meet? Is it a difficult meet? Is it something that
Gotta set the scene.
Yeah, you gotta open up the windows a little bit, let the light in. All right, we're getting pretty close to the end of the hour, so I
Ooh,
just kind of want to jump on a couple things before we call it the night.
okay.
Um, Now, like we established, you're a baby writer, but you are going the self publishing route.
Yes.
Uh, However, I want to talk a little bit about the industry insight from your perspective.
Okay.
Remember, this doesn't mean you have to be right. It doesn't mean that you have to know all the inner workings of the legal ramifications of how the publishing industry works. But from your perspective and what you've learned and heard and experienced yourself, what is it about the traditional publishing industry that makes it seem almost a impossible for an author to reach, and B, obsolete in the future?
Okay. So we're gonna go with A. Yes, it kind when I was looking, I was initially looking to do the traditional publishing route and then get a feel of what it is. And I couldn't get very far. So I was looking through all of the publishing houses that may be interested in my book and look through all the requirements. And the requirements are tough. It's like I'm going through all of them. It's like, okay, it's like check, check, check. Okay. Yeah, no, that's not going to work.
I gotta be
And
6'2".
exactly. And so I was looking for a publishing house that was interested in doing a new adult paranormal romance. And this, but certain aspects of my book say did not meet the requirements. And it was like really deterring. I was really literally sitting down for 4 hours going through all the list of publishing houses that I could get into, only to find out that A, it's like no, they're not going to talk to you directly. It's like you're going to need it. It's like you're going to need an agent.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you go to find publishing houses, that yeah, they're going to speak to the author directly, which I was looking forward to because me personally, I hate the middleman. And we don't have that. We don't have many options, and the requirements are just impossible. Like they're asking like for a whole essay on like ridiculous questions. And there was one publishing house where I actually got scammed.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They
Uh-huh.
charged you, right?
It's like no, luckily no money was put down.
Oh,
It's like
good.
it was like gut feeling. And like I was like, I almost submitted my stuff to them and like did the money, had the paperwork and everything.
Yeah.
All that was left was that I had to submit my work. And when it's too good to be true, 9 times out of 10 is too good to be true. And so coming to find out that publishing house wasn't paying their authors. They were withholding the money.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like I was looking at the Better Business Bureau and like they had great ratings, but I went a little bit further. Someone told me to go a little bit further, and coming to find out, like, from authors themselves, that they weren't getting paid, or
Huh.
they can't get their book sales. And there was another incident where this author, he was trying to do a book signing, and he was like trying to order a bunch of his books so that we can bring it to the convention, and he received another author's books. And it's just like, how did that happen? And so he went to the publishing house, like, hey, this is what happened. And he still hasn't gotten his books. And they were blaming everybody under the sun except taking responsibility and fixing the problem. It's like, okay, yeah, we're not going to do them.
Yeah,
So it's
forget
like,
that.
I think it is.
Yeah, I think I'll just go through myself.
Yeah. Like, if it's my fault, it's my fault.
Yeah, you could take the blame and make changes and then reevaluate. What about that second part? What are your feelings on the traditional publishing route? Not the route per se, but traditionally publishing
Mm-hmm.
becoming something of an obsolete idea. Mostly because Brandon Sanderson just did his Kickstarter release and changed the way we look at it. He made millions, on his own. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Not that any writer can do that. Please, if anyone's listening, you can't just do Kickstarter and make millions. He's Brandon Sanderson. He has a name. He's qualified himself multiple times. But in a sense, he took away the middleman, as you were saying
Mm-hmm.
earlier. He took away the agent. He took away the publishing company. Uh, what are your thoughts on the idea that the publishing industry is potentially going to be obsolete, and because of self-publishing?
I don't think the traditional publishing industry is going to be obsolete. I just think that it's going to be stiff competition
Mm,
with the self-publishing, because now I think we're in an era where everybody wants to be their own boss. They
hmm
hate working for the big guys. And I think that the pandemic really um brought that to the forefront. It's like everybody's like losing their jobs, like working from home, and it really gave people the time to think, like, this really is the time for I can go ahead and start my business and make a name for myself, and like do those dreams that they had to put in the back burner.
hmm
And so I think that book wise, that really came to the forefront. It's like, hey, I'm tired of earning pennies when I can be earning dollars if I do this myself.
Absolutely. And even like you go through and I'm not knocking Amazon in any way, but if you go through Amazon, they do take a portion, and
Mm-hmm.
usually it's the cost of the book print, which is like, depending on your book size, it could be $5 to six
Yep.
dollars, whatever. But you can end up seeing up to $3 per book for yourself, and that's a pretty good chunk, especially if you sell 1,000 copies. You just made 3 grand, and you can't expect to make 100% because they got to cover the book, the cost of the book,
Yep.
because it's print on demand. If anyone doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, However, there is the other route where instead of them taking a percentage of the sale, you can actually pay for the minimum value of the print, plus a small percentage for Amazon, and you get physical copies, and then you go out and you sell them yourselves. You could sell them to stores. You could sell them, while you're out at a convention or
Mm-hmm.
whatever like that. Which is for anyone. I'm saying this mostly for people listening. Is the distribution is at your hand in that situation. How distribution works is they pre-sell books to the avenues, the platforms. So when you see your favorite books in a bookstore, usually they bought those books already from the publishing house,
Mm-hmm.
and then they sell the books. And then usually, if they don't sell, they can actually exchange. They could send them back and get a refund on them and stuff like that. There are probably different variations of that, but that's what I've dealt with in my career. Um, but yeah, I could agree with you that it might not go obsolete, um, but it's definitely, especially if the indie authors, and I'm not saying this in a negative way,
Mm-hmm.
but if indie authors take it seriously, and I know they're taking their writing seriously, without a doubt, they are serious about the creative process. But like you said, and I agreed with you. The business end is no, it's not what we want to do. It's scary. We don't always know what to do. It costs money, right? We don't
Yeah.
all have the money that you need for marketing. And when I say, if the indie industry can take it seriously and they go, you know what, I'm going to save up $30,000, because you got to invest in your company, right? So like
Yeah.
when I opened up I had a theater for 3 years. Like when I opened up a Playhouse Theater, yeah, it was 6,200 square feet, but I didn't open it up with $0. Like I had to save up money, I had to get investors, we had to build it out. And I actually approached my music career like that. And I was able to retire at 27 from the music industry, and I was done. Like
It's
I
awesome.
was like, what do I want to do with life? like, but my career in music, the same way I approached it writing was I had to save up money, and I had to say, all right, I can't work a job and do music. I can't be a waiter. I can't be somebody who packs out supermarkets. I can't be like, I have to be so I started working in the music industry. I did, session work, or somebody hired me to go on tour with them, or whatever the case may be. And I was like, oh, I'm making money in the industry. And I realized, and I think if indie authors can find that formula for themselves and say, how do I turn this into a business and not if it happens, great.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that will definitely do what you're talking about, which is making it something where the traditional publishers are like, oh, we neglected this, and now it's competition because they're making the money.
Basically a competition. It's
Yeah.
like, especially for lead titles, like each book is treated differently in traditional publishing
Yeah.
because you have the lead titles and then you have like the mid titles. So like the lead titles is like, ooh, this book is because they look at the book, they pay attention to the book where they feel like they're going to get the highest profit.
Oh yeah, Stephen King is going to be pushed,
of course,
between. Yeah.
And then like the other books, you have the mid titles where like they're going to get equal treatment, but they're not going to get like the Stephen King package.
Yeah.
And I feel like if learn the process, if you can learn it, then do it. Kind of like with crafts. It's like you see like these nice homemade like items that you see on Etsy. It's like I can learn how to do that and kind of like make it my own. It's kind of like the same way with like doing a book.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you see a wonderful book. It's like great. It's like I'm going to learn how to do it so that way I can make something of my own.
Yeah, you could add your voice to the process because, again, there are 7 stories you could tell in the world, but it's the way we represent those stories through our eyes, through our voice, that makes it unique. Before we end the show, I want to ask the other question that you had picked earlier, and it has to do with what we're talking about, so that's going to be fun.
Awesome.
It's about the industry. George R.R. Martin from the Game of Thrones series said in an interview, in response to being told he lacks representation, that he's an old white dude who wrote what he wrote. He then went on to list a large number of POC authors who have done an excellent job on diversifying the writing community. When it comes to representation in novels, whose job is it to make more diverse worlds in books?
Wow. Okay.
An easy one to close the show.
Okay. So, I'm a big person on writing what you know. It's like I'm Puerto Rican. I know a lot about Puerto Rican culture, say lingo, etc. But I think that research plays a lot into it, and also you have to interact with research. You have to interact with people that isn't part of your culture. And for this one, like for my book, Tinker, she's English. There's not a lot of English people in Charlotte. So I had to go out and like find people. It's like find the link. It's like look up the lingo. It's like see how they interact with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the only where you can like get the most accurate representation you can, rather than just going on a leap of faith and hope no one gets offended.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you've stated multiple times in this episode, you come from a Puerto Rican heritage.
Yes.
And I'm guessing your character, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, being English with red hair,
yes,
is probably a Caucasian character.
Yes.
is okay.
Yes.
um, do you feel? And by the way, I don't agree with what I'm about to say. I'm asking it as a provocative
Okay.
devil's advocate. Do you feel in any way that being someone a POC author and having an opportunity to represent diversity, do you feel there's a potential for pushback or blowback because you chose to elevate a uh, English Caucasian female woman character? Do you feel that that is a potential? And
Oh yeah.
did you do that? Did you do that consciously, or is it something you're like, this is just what I feel I need to write?
I did it because I wanted to branch out. I didn't want to do just Puerto Rican characters. Like majority of my books were Puerto Rican characters. I had one from Uruguay, and I really wanted to step out from the say from writing Latin characters and do other characters and see how I go. So this was basically an experiment on how well I do on writing characters that isn't Hispanic.
Yeah, and in a sense, you're actually becoming the change you want to see. You're creating diversity in your experience. So,
Mhm.
as you said, you created all these worlds, which were primarily based on those cultures that you grew up
Mhm.
with, that you've experienced. And you're saying, I've already given the world and multiple books in this perspective. I want to add some other looks, and I want to see the world not only through my eyes as somebody who's come from the Puerto Rican culture, but somebody that loves and feels for this particular culture, the English and like that kind of like world. And
Mhm.
you respectfully did your research, you went into those communities, you did what you can to give the
Oh yeah.
most authentic voice to it. So that's
Mhm.
really beautiful. uh is diversity something that is on the shoulders of the author, though, in the sense of like, is it disingenuous for, let's say, Caucasian authors to only write Caucasian characters, or in the sense where they go, all right, well, I got to hit the quota, so I got to knock off these boxes, and like imagine George R. R. Martin started writing stories where they're like, all right, they have this character, they have their LGBTQ, they have their POC, they have their woman character, they have their this character. Do you What are your thoughts on the disingenuousness of box ticking versus just writing whatever it is they know to write and staying into, as George R. R. Martin was told, you lack representation? What are your thoughts on those two different viewpoints?
Yeah, I do definitely think that diversity is on the shoulders of authors. Um, I think people are trying to look for the representation
Mm.
that they need, and it's like some people are just like tired of seeing the same old things. They want to see something new, and I think that's what they're trying to say. And it may not be the it may not be that author may not be able to provide it. It's like it may be like a different one. You just have to find it. And I think it shouldn't have to be a checkbox
Mm.
when an author has to write their story. I don't say I feel like authors shouldn't feel obligated to diversify the characters because it all depends on the setting that the author is trying to look for. And for second specific and like let's use my book for example. My book is there's only one Caucasian girl, which is Tinker, and she's adopted into an Italian family. So you're
Hey.
yes, and so so you're only going to see people in that like in that particular background.
Before you go any further, I'd like to thank you for acknowledging that Sicilians and Italians are not Caucasian. We're Mediterranean.
Yes,
And my cousins are like darker than I am.
same. Oh,
I
no,
just happen to be pale.
yes, like I can't tell you how many times people look at me and they look at my mom and sister and then ask me if I'm adopted.
That's actually funny. When I was growing up, people thought I was Puerto Rican, actually, for the lighter skin Puerto, because the way my beard and everything grew. Then
Mhm.
as I got older, people were like, "Oh, you're Jewish," and I go, "Well, Jewish isn't really a." Not a
No.
Sicily. It's a but no, no, I'm Sicilian. They're like, but you're so pale. And I'm like, I yes, it happens. Because like I grew up with my cousin and she's darker than you,
Hmm.
and they're like, "There's no way you're related." And I'm like, "We this is literally my mom's sister's daughter." You know, like
Just like
Sicilian.
to see me, to see my sister. It's like my sister. She's half white, half Puerto Rican, and then
Mhm.
me. There's me. I'm half black, half Puerto Rican. So like one of these things just doesn't belong here.
It's so interesting how that works out. But not to interrupt what you were saying.
Mhm,
But all right, so Tinker is primarily Caucasian. She was
mhm.
adopted by an Italian family, and that's where you left off, where I jumped in.
Yes, it's like it all depends on the setting that the author is trying to portray, and it's like you may not see an African American character, you may not see a Latin character. I think it just I think it's really tough for authors um trying to feel like they have to check all the boxes,
Mm.
and when in fact they really don't. It's like it's like it's their story, and if they're gonna diversify, they're gonna diversify, and it's like if they don't, they don't. And I feel like it's like really puts a pressure on a lot of authors.
Yeah, yeah, and it doesn't diminish the value of a story. Like a story is great
Hmm.
despite whatever the characters may physically look like, and there. But again, what is it? What do they say? Like even me, I'm like my fantasy book is based on Western. There's dragons and castles and
Hmm.
knights and kings and queens. Um, but that doesn't diminish the value of the story just
Hmm.
because it's more of whatever people feel is being oversaturated. But at the same time, you know, like my story takes place in a world that is not Earth. And it's back in the old days, the medieval times, but it doesn't have our history. It doesn't have, so there's no Africa, there's no US states, there's no Northern America, Southern America, there's no Europe, there's no Russia, there's no Japan, there's none of that exists. It's its own world. It has two suns, and I use science, and everyone has darker skin because there's two suns. And if you didn't have darker skin, those two suns would kill you. And that's how I kind of was like I justify it that way. But I did have someone say I couldn't write, I have to change that. And I go, what do you mean? They're like, well, because you're white. And I go, I'm not white. They're like, yes, you are, because you're pale. And okay, fine, that's colorism. I was like, that's fine. But why do I got to write characters that don't have dark skin because they're protecting themselves from the two suns? And they go, because you don't understand that culture. I go, what culture? Their culture is Zandia. It's all made up. It's like if we went to Mars and there was, a dark person or a light person or a whatever person, and someone says, oh, you can't wear that hat because it's not your culture. And you're like, but it's the only hat on Mars. But that Martian over there is wearing that hat, and you're not allowed to wear that hat because you don't understand their history. Like that's what it would be like because
Makes
it's
sense.
completely it's so because it's its own world. It's space. um all right. So just to end it. Do you think making new worlds takes the pressure off? Going, well, how can you have diversity if the people have three heads?
I feel like either way, we're still gonna get that argument. It's
Yeah.
like that argument is always gonna come back, regardless, like because you went through it, because they're not
Yeah.
on Earth.
There's no Earth.
Yeah. I think regardless, people are still going to be looking for the diversity that they're searching for in the representation. But it's like we shouldn't feel obligated to go ahead and check all the boxes.
Yeah.
And I think it just like if it doesn't fit the story, it's like my mom always says, if it doesn't serve a purpose in the story, then it shouldn't be in the story at all.
Oh yeah. 1,000%.
It's like
1,000%.
that's my
Yeah.
mom's motto.
those are the first things you cut out. Like you said, the
Mhm.
cleaning up the diamond. Taking the
Yep.
diamond rub. You go. I like that this moment's there, but if I take that off, the diamond just went up in value.
Mhm.
So listen, Dana, I had a pleasure interviewing you. I really appreciate you giving me this hour of your time. And for the audience out there, how do they find you? Even though information will be in the description for the listeners.
It's like I had a lot of fun. It's like this is like my first interview. I'm so glad that you reached out to me. I
Absolutely.
would I would definitely do this again because this was so much fun. So to find me, it's like find me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube under Tinker the Writer.
Tinker the Writer. All right.
Yes.
So is that Tinker spelt like Tinker, or is it like
Yes,
a
kind of
weird
like
spelling?
nearly same way.
All right.
It's like
And
all one word.
all one word. And Dana and I, we met each other through TikTok, and she has some really great content there. She's very interactive. She's a highly involved member of the community over there.
I'm always on it.
Yeah, you're always, but that's a good thing. You're always interacting, always showing people love and appreciation. Um, so I'm grateful again that you were on the right mindset, and that it's a play on words. You like that, right? The right mindset.
Yes.
You got to get into the
It was
right
awesome.
mindset. Anyway, people are like, you're spelling it wrong. No, it's spelled right. I spelled right. Okay. I spelled right to
It's
be
awesome.
right. So, but with that, yeah, that's it. All her information will be in the description below. You can find her that way. I highly recommend following her social media, especially TikTok, because you just recently posted some educational videos on writing, your journey as a writer. So
Mhm.
you can learn a thing or two, and that's always worth everything. That's how we elevate one another. And do you know the sign off? Do you remember the sign off
So,
that I always do?
it's like, no, what was the sign off?
On TikTok? I always at the end of every one of my videos, trying to see if anyone remembers.
Oh my gosh,
I'm
and I
branding
watch
myself.
videos too. Oh my gosh. I
Sorry,
don't.
no one gets to the end of my videos. They're just like,
It's like I do. I always forget.
all right, to everyone, thank you so very much, and as always, keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Bye.